Welcome to Diary of an Unemployed Actor with me, Milo Dennison. Each week, I speak with up-and-coming actors, actresses, and filmmakers about the entertainment industry. We discuss success, failure, and share a few tips to inspire those of you who have a passion for the creative arts. Although I should tweak that intro just a little bit, because this week I'm speaking with Eugene Capon, who is a VR filmmaker or VR storyteller, I think is really the way I should introduce it. He does special effects and virtual reality shows and works within that realm. So it was fascinating to talk to him because it's basically on a subject that I'm not too super familiar with, but I do follow technology and I'm a bit of a tech nerd. So I do appreciate that there is a lot in the virtual reality realm that we as filmmakers should pay attention to, because there is an aspect of our careers that might move into that realm. I mean, we've already seen it now with film festivals offering sections and categories on 360 virtual reality films, and there is online forums that are held in virtual reality films, and Eugene actually talks about one of those that he hosted. So it's a fascinating subject, and I think it's one that as entertainers we really shouldn't disregard as being a fad. It is now the future, or possibly the future. I assume it will be, and I think Eugene definitely assumes it will be. And so I'd say listen in and kind of enjoy that conversation, because it's still all about storytelling. And as filmmakers and entertainers, that's what we're here to do. We're to tell stories and entertain people with those stories. And virtual reality, augmented reality, all that fun stuff is just another avenue of how to do that. It's another option for creatives to be creative. So with that, we'll do a quick promo from a sponsor, and then directly to my discussion with Eugene Capon. Enjoy. Well, let's start with your college, because you went to Evergreen State College, where I almost went.
Really?
Yeah, a friend of mine was going there around the same time I was looking at school, and almost went, and I actually kind of regret not going. I think I would have enjoyed the experience there more. But I'm a Seattle native.
Oh, no shit. That's awesome. You're out in London now, right?
I am, yeah.
Okay,
so you went to Evergreen. Did you study what was your study there in Evergreen?
Okay, so for anybody who doesn't know,
Explain
Evergreen has a unique class system where instead of taking, like prereqs and basically building up to a very specific degree, you basically have just a couple of different routes you can go. The route I went was for a bachelor's in liberal arts. And the way that the classes are actually stacked is you don't take individual classes. You take block classes. And within those blocks, you might take, one math, one science, one PE, and whatever your credits end up out to. So you need 180 credits to graduate. Whatever you basically declare at the end, you have to be able to justify in the classes that you took. So for me, I had a bachelor's degree in YouTube studies.
YouTube studies. So not like special effects, which is what I thought you were going to say, but YouTube studies.
Yeah. So basically for me, that was filmmaking, online marketing, advanced physics, VFX, and animation.
Okay.
And so the first of my 2 years that I was there, I took a lot of basically film classes, writing, English, philosophy, cinema classes. And then my second year, I took a semi-independent year-long course that basically made it so I had to produce my own films or my own shorts by the end of the year. And that's what I did. I did my two projects on two directors that I really admire, Hayao Miyazaki, which, created like Spirited Away and Howl's Moving Castle, and then internet director Mike Delaquest, or Mike Diva,
Okay, I'm not familiar with that one.
Oh, did you ever see the like anime-inspired Trump video that went viral? So he's a really, really unique individual in terms of directing ability.
Okay.
He directed the Panini music video for Little Nas X.
Okay.
He started doing viral type videos at the very beginning of the YouTube career. And, he's just been killing it ever since. There's actually a film on Netflix right now called The Bash Brothers with The Lonely Island, and he's actually the guy who directed that.
Okay, I'll look it up. So was that then the path to go into animated film direction?
Originally, I wanted to be, I just wanted to be a YouTuber.
Okay. It's amazing, but it's so amazing the world we live in now that is a path of like, you know what I want to do? I want to make videos for YouTube.
Oh, absolutely.
10, 15 years ago, people would be like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah. So the first time I was in college, when I was doing community college, I got dual associate degrees in visual communications, one in fine arts, one in technical design, and I graduated about 2008. When, the economy collapsed and nobody wanted to hire me for any reason, just because they couldn't afford it. And it took me about 2 years to find an internship as a graphic and web designer. But here's the thing, when you start studying graphic design and web design, you start finding little facets of other things that are relatable, and you go, I want to learn about typography. I really want to understand color theory. I'm doing web design. There's this thing called Flash animation that seems really cool. So how do I make Flash cartoons? And then, hey, I'm making cartoons. I should probably learn about video production. And when I was doing my internship, a buddy of mine named Joseph Clift, who is actually, he grew up in the same town as I, and we went to the same high school, but we never met each other until we got to college. Well, anyway, in college, we became really, really good friends. And when I graduated and I was at my internship, he wrote a movie called Justice Never Reloads. And it was like this buddy cop movie that just made fun of the buddy cop tropes. And because it was filmed at WSU, all the actors were like college age kids who were playing like grizzly 40, 50-year-olds.
Right.
Right. And of course, like they made jokes, calling attention to it, right. So he hits me up and he goes, hey man, I know you're doing design and stuff. Do you know VFX? And I was like, what do you need? I can learn in 2 weeks. And I did. I taught myself After Effects in 2 weeks. And that way I was able to do like gun flares and a door exploding off hinges and the intro title sequence. And they were really impressed with all the stuff that I had built for them. And they were like, hey man, do you want to be in the movie? I said, as what? He said, Warehouse Thug number 2. And I was like, absolutely. So I did this really like weird bit part in this film. And when the movie went to film festivals, because I had worked on it both as a minor actor and the main like VFX person, I got to go sit on the panels and talking about building something bigger than myself with a team of people and having people genuinely interested in what we were doing was the greatest feeling in the world. And I was like, how do I keep this feeling going? And YouTube seemed like the obvious answer.
And then that led you to a studio, Capon. How do you say it? Is that right? Am I pronouncing your last name right? Capon?
Capon, okay. Like the Spanish word for rooster.
Got it. Capon.
Yeah, Capon. Okay. No. So we started Studio Capon when we sold Glitched.
Okay.
Glitched is one of the first in VR talk shows to ever be ordered by like a social network. Yeah, so and we did that for 3 seasons. After we did the first season and we got like the first paycheck, we were like, man, where do we put the money? We should probably start a production company.
Okay. So I want to jump back to Glitched. That So I watched some of the clips that you had on YouTube and stuff. So how did that work? So were you recording it with the VR headset, or was it, because what it looks to me like is you recorded the audio and then just did 3D animation to kind of animate some of the movements and stuff like that?
Oh no, those were live shows.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. So
those were 100% live shows.
Yeah, so walk me through making that a little bit.
Absolutely. So the first season we did on Altspace, and to kind of to put this forward, we did the first season on Altspace and the second and third season on High Fidelity. And those are both social VR platforms that are very different from each other. Altspace is very plug and play, while High Fidelity is overly customizable. And so when I first discovered VR, I was like, this is the future. This is what I want to do now, because I know it's going to be huge. And I quit my job at a YouTube consulting agency that I got into right out of college to go pursue VR full time. And I started following everybody I could in the industry. And there was only like 200 people because none of the big VR headsets had come out yet.
Roughly what year was this?
This was 2016. I quit my job to go pursue VR. And for the next year, I was jumping on every hackathon, every, building workshop, every course I could find on 360 video and animation, because I knew all these skills were going to be, very critical to pushing all this stuff moving forward. And I just happened to follow somebody who was hired at Altspace to put together 16 big shows for their platform. And I was like the last person they approached about giving a show to. Some of the other people were like Reggie Watts, Justin Roiland, who created this show called Rick and Morty, Michael Sarah Silverman, and Tim and Eric had a show called Josh. And then I got a show, and I called my buddy, Topher Welsh, who had started the After Effects Seattle group, which is the largest motion design user group in the country. That's actually kind of how we met. And I knew that he had been a radio talk show host at one point on Funky Monkey here in the Pacific Northwest. And I was like, hey, man, do you want to co-host this? I mean, I could use an Andy to, Conan O'Brien over here.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And he was like, yeah, let's do it. So we started calling every big YouTuber we were friends with, because, I'd been working at a YouTube consulting agency. And we're like, hey, man, I hear you have 800,000 subscribers. You want to come do a VR show? And with Altspace, again, it's very plug and play. You just pick an avatar and you go.
So would you send them so would they install a software or an app on their computer? And what was their end?
So Altspace is free to download.
Okay.
You just go into Steam, you download it. And we tried to find YouTubers that we knew were tech-oriented and owned a VR headset.
Okay.
So in the show, you just put on your VR headset, you log in. We had their usernames and permissions set up ahead. And then you ended up in this room that we stole Reggie Watts' stage.
Okay.
From him. They built him a stage and we stole it from him straight up. And we would just conduct these really funny celebrity type interviews every single week. And eventually we got to probably our 8th episode. So we'd been doing this for about 2-3 months now. And we get this email going, hey, I need you to cancel your show for tomorrow. And we're like, why? And they said, we can't tell you. And so I turned to Topher and I was like, dude, they're either canceling our show or Altspace is going under. And because this is experimental and they're not paying us, I have a feeling they're filing for bankruptcy tomorrow and they're making the announcement that they're closing. And that's exactly what happened. A few months later, Microsoft would actually go and buy them out. and basically bring them back from the dead. And, their Altspace is still alive. But for how many months we had this like developed premise and show in VR that had no home. And it was really cool that Philip Rosedale and his team reached out and they were like, hey, we really like your show. And to me, that was like, oh, you probably couldn't afford anybody else on that roster, right?
Tell me about the film, the Journey VR, because that was at SIFF, which is on my list of places to eventually have a film shown.
Oh, cool. Like, are you working on something, or is just like down the road sort of
down
plans?
Yeah, I mean, I have a film that I'm working on. Actually, I don't think it's going to be good enough for SIFF, unfortunately. But hopefully the one after this film would be good enough for SIFF.
Oh, okay. So Journey VR was my first 360 video project I ever self-produced. And I actually built it because of I was approached by Seattle Fashion Week as going, hey, we see that you do videos and stuff. We want to bring VR to our show. And this is still like very early 360 video VR stuff. Can we have you build something for us? And I was like, how long do I have? They're like, you have 28 days. I'm like, oof, that's a hard pull. So I created this very simple concept of you just being shot into space and going through a very operatic experience. And I pulled in my buddy Adrian Ladelia, who had been the guy who actually did the intro for Glitch later on. But him and I had been friends, and we had worked at Comic Shop TV together for about 4 years. And I was like, hey man, can you build, I want like the Halo theme, but I want it for like 8 minutes. And I want it to match this like VR experience I'm making. And he said, okay. And I remember him sending me the first 2 minutes, and it was just so beautiful. I just started like tearing up because it was so well done. I was like, man, how did you hit it on the first knot, man? This is incredible. And so we debuted it at Seattle Fashion Week. We set it in a week early, right on time, a week before the show, I mean. And they were like, this is fantastic. Here's your own booth, and, you got to bring in a VR headset and, you can show it to people. I said, great. And somebody at SIFF saw it and was like, hey, we want to do 360 videos at SIFF this year. You should submit this. And they actually went, hey, look, I'm on the board. If you submit this, there's a good chance I'll get through. I'm like, that's great. So I submitted it. It became an official selection at SIFF. And then somebody at Steam saw it and was like, hey, we're doing a rental program on Steam. We would love it for you to submit this to us. And we'll sell copies of it and rentals, 2-day rentals. And it was the number one 360 video on Steam for about 30 days.
Because when I think going to film festivals, I think I'm sitting in an auditorium, rows of people sitting next to me watching a film on the screen. What's the VR experience like?
The VR experience is a little bit more personal in terms of this. Usually you have some sort of like large room and you have people at different booths, and each booth is an individual film. And so you go in, you go, hey, that film looks interesting. There's usually like either a poster or a computer monitor playing a trailer, and you sit down and you put on the headset and the headphones, and they start it for you. And, you do the experience, you get up and you walk over to the next film.
Do you see that changing in the future in regards to the experience where perhaps maybe multiple people are watching the film at the same time with multiple headsets, or is this still going to be similar?
So you're actually talking about like telecasting. I've actually a friend of mine had a VR experience. I think it was called Click. Well, anyway, he did this VR experience, which was actually at the Pacific Science Center, and I went and I helped him out put together 30 headsets that were all on a trigger. So 30 people could sit in a booth and they would start running the experience all at the same time to them.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was imagining. Something similar to that.
It's a little bit more expensive when you're trying to run 30 different headsets at the same time versus a small indie creator like myself, where you might have like 3 headsets.
Okay. Is it just there's something with the processing needed?
No. Like, headsets cost money.
Okay. So it's mostly just
yeah. It's just financial contribution to, trying to get people to watch your content.
Okay.
I mean, like if I could have had, an auditorium where 60 people were all sitting and all putting on the same headset, I totally would. Except for going to film festivals with Journey, it didn't exist yet. Like, there was no way to, get 30, 40 people all in the same experience at the same time. And especially now with things like COVID, you definitely want to like clean the headsets off individually. And that's a lot of headsets to clean before you try to get the next person in.
Do you see it going more virtual, like people watching stuff at home versus going into spaces like that?
I think with like the current climate of how things are working, more shows are definitely becoming telecasted or teleprompted. And I definitely see there being a time and place where you might put on a headset, have an avatar go into a room that is going to play an experience, and then your feed from inside the social network essentially gets shifted over to whatever experience that you're trying to play.
How long do you think that's because I remember watching an episode of the X-Files in the late 90s where Fox Mulder went into like a virtual reality type experience. And I mean, everybody's always talking about virtual reality being the next big thing. And I know when Oculus came out, so I have an Oculus, and I remember when it came out and was like, oh, this is the shit. And then you play with it for a few weeks and then you kind of like, all right, that was cool. And I'm still waiting for that big jump. And I actually thought COVID might be that thing too, because especially with film festivals, people watching festivals at home and television, but I still haven't feel that we've hit that turning point to where it's mainstream enough to where it's actually in, I don't know what word I'm trying to look for there is, but you get where I'm going with my question?
Yeah. So I think what we're talking about now is the eventual replacement of the internet and how we're making tiny little strides to it, right? So for anybody who's ever watched, say, like Ready Player One or The Matrix,
there you go. Something more recent than an episode of the X-Files. There we go.
Yeah,
Stop Ready Player One.
There are always these like virtual worlds, like the Oasis or The Matrix, that basically get everybody on this wide universal platform that leads to like games or social experiments or, a digital version of the library. And in real life, we actually call that the metaverse. And it's supposed to be the eventual replacement of the internet. And I actually give a talk on the steps that we need to take to basically get there. For us to actually have the metaverse, there are a few things we need. The first thing is we need better headsets. Right now, there are things like the Varjo out of Europe, which has human eye resolution in their headsets, but the headsets are like $25,000. And the average person is never going to be able to have that. The second thing is for more realistic textures and gameplay, you're definitely going to need a beastly machine, right? We have a $11,000 PC and it's still not real enough for us, right? Like, you need full racks of servers to get it to that point where you actually feel like you're in a real environment. And I think things like Stadia, Google Stadia, are really interesting because it's all server side, where you can do the most graphically intensive experience in the world on your, $600 phone or $200 iPad, right? So I think there are definitely ways around it in terms of processing power, but that just raises other questions such as latency.
Yeah.
One of the big problems with VR is it tends to make people sick who are not used to it. And that's due to a condition called VR sickness. And that's when you have a disconnect between what you're visually seeing and the inner ear fluid that is actually feeling. Your inner ear fluid is responsible for making sure that you know what's up and what's down and what's left and what's right. And when you have a disconnect between what you visually see and what you're supposed to be feeling or supposed to be experiencing, your body goes, oh crap, there's something wrong. I need to let you know. And that's why you get sick in it.
Yeah.
It also causes this through things like low frame rates. I mean, there should never be a VR experience slower than, 60 frames a second. 90 would be ideal because at that point you have trouble telling where the frame rate actually is because it feels so smooth. And if you're doing everything server-side rendering, you get that latency because it has to travel over the internet. Mm-hmm. And things might not load fast enough. So I think when we get to like 6G, whereas 5G, you have 100 gigs a second in transfer speed. 6G, you get about 30 terabytes a second.
Okay.
And so I think at that point, it's the technology will finally be there. And then from there, you're basically trying to solve social issues at this point, where what is your, base identity inside of virtual reality? Are you an avatar that's been photographically, modeled to match you, every little pore and hair strand? Or are you a 6-foot barbarian wolf, from a, distant world, right? Mm-hmm. And then you have to be able to take this avatar or your digital representation or your twin and have it populated across every single platform. And we don't have a way of going, hey, when you jump into Doom, you don't get to be yourself now.
Yeah.
Or, when you're in World of Warcraft, you have to choose from any of the races that, they provide for you. So it takes you out of the experience.
Do you see it happening within our lifetime? And we've gone from
15 years
2G to 5G, in not that long of a period of time.
No, we're actually already talking about 6G. So the great thing about, how technology evolves mm-hmm. is it gets faster and faster and faster. And when we get quantum computing, on the regular, that's a whole new bag of worms that we could open up.
What about, I'm thinking filmmaking point of view and creating CGI characters. We've already seen this obviously with Star Wars and a few other things where mm-hmm. they digitally recreate characters that are dead. Is that, and I know actors are complaining about that, basically saying, hey, that's my job, or hey, I don't want to be digitally recreated after I'm dead. Do you see that happening?
I think it's going to be the norm.
Yeah.
I think it's going to become the norm. People are going to sign away their likeness, or you're going to hire a 3D modeler to create a avatar or a digital realistic, being, so to speak, that is going to be used in movies. Look at the music industry. For the last how many years we've had digital acts. We had Death Clock from Adult Swim. We had the Gorillaz. We have Hasume Miku, who is a huge pop star in Japan, who's been around for, 20 years now? And I don't think it's going to be slowing down with just the music industry. I definitely know that there are Instagram models now who are 100% digital.
Yeah.
We're getting brand deals.
I've seen that, yeah.
There's, every day there's a new agency popping up right now who has, hey, hire our digital models. They work cheap, right?
So you can basically just pay for the model, put that model into whatever placement you want the model to be in to advertise your product. And that model is completely 100% fake.
Yeah. And it's just going to keep, it's going to keep going. It's the brand new world of digital commerce where you don't have to pay a physical actor for certain things. Yeah. Think about it this way. Say you have a digital avatar for James Bond, right?
Mm-hmm.
You could have a different motion capture, actor play James Bond, but in all the films, he universally looks a certain way.
Yep.
I mean, you don't have to update the character every single year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or say we did this with, the Justice League. I mean, Henry Cavill is out. Batfleck is out. But if we had used digital beings for those characters in the first place, you could make as many movies as you wanted, and you wouldn't have to pay these like high budget actors, what they're asking for.
Yeah, it's interesting. From a personal perspective, I'm not a fan of it. I still, even like, I mentioned Star Wars, for example. I enjoy the original Star Wars because I know there's actual people in the Stormtrooper outfits versus, and even the new ones where they're CGI'd characters. And, but obviously any new film, I mean, you look at any of the Marvel films, I mean, they're almost all CGI and they're making, shit tons of money. So it's certainly where the world is moving to.
I mean, in the MCU, they've had 3 different actors play Hulk, right?
Yeah, exactly.
This could have been the software, right? you could have an Edward Norton-esque digital actor through all the movies.
Yeah, true.
Yeah,
interesting. Where on a more practical level, though, like day-to-day people that want to get into this type of stuff and create virtual characters, how would a more not major Hollywood studio type of a person get into this line of work?
There are a ton of really, really entry-level devices for trying to get into things like this. If you're trying to just play around with VR and do the whole like rigging system and controlling an avatar, there are platforms like VR Chat that I would recommend. Then you can just record yourself inside of VR Chat to make like YouTube videos. If you're trying to go more just like talking head route, I would say things like Base Rig, where you can buy it for $15 on Steam. You can go to Mixamo, which is a piece of software that comes with the Adobe Creative License. You can make your own avatar and then you can upload it to FaceRig. And that way you can be your own character. You can talk to the camera and you can, take that character and put them into whatever environment you want. But if you're going to, go the route of, full CGI tracking and everything else, there are some great options as far as free software like Blender would be great. Or you can go a more professional route, and there are things like Maya or C4D or 3ds Max. Substance Painter is a great addition for updating textures. And then if you're going to go full cinematics, as far as trying to create like bigger end projects, I might suggest learning Unreal. They have a great cinema stack as far as creating a digital world and environment, taking tracked facial features and body rigs and importing it into the system. And then you can control the base environment. And, that's really close to how Hollywood groups are doing it. Say like The Mandalorian was very much done in the same space as far as digital backgrounds, and then all the actors were in front of an LED screen. Or you might take a look at what they were doing for the Avatar films, where they actually had a real life camera with a tracker in it, and they were like moving around a soundstage, taking a look at this digital environment in real time.
So they were seeing on the camera what the virtual environment looks like around the characters.
Yeah. And then it's the best way to figure out like exactly, hey, this is where I want the camera to go. This is, the sort of pose or action I want from the actors.
Yeah.
And then you can really take your time and not have to spend millions of dollars building these ultra sets that, you're just going to have to tear down and get rid of later. I think bringing these sort of tools to the industry is just going to keep pushing us forward as far as the capabilities and the worlds that we're going to create and put our actors into.
All right. Well, what is next for you? What should we be looking for from?
Today, we just released our next 360 video earlier today. It's called we rebuilt the first level of Sonic the Hedgehog as a 360 video.
So the original Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah, from like 1991
as a VR video.
Green Hills level 1.
That's nice. All right, where can people see that if they want to see it?
You can find it on the Studio Capon YouTube channel.
There you go.
It's just Studio then Cap on, like you're putting a cap on your head. All one word.
I'll put a link in the notes.
Perfect.
Excellent. And then anything after that we should be keeping an eye out for?
Nothing that I can talk about publicly yet.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
So if people want to track you down or follow you, where would they find you?
I would say hit me up on Twitter, which is just Capon Design. But if you're interested in some of the XR content creation stuff that we do or animation, you can email me at eugene@studiocapon.com.
I'm going to actually follow up one more question because this actually was on my list of questions. So explain for anyone listening the difference between XR, VR, and AR.
Okay, XR is basically the all-encompassing term for extended reality. That's anything outside of meat space, which is what you and I actually occupy. Augmented reality is basically an overlay of visual, audible, or taste, some sort of extrasensory change to your actual physical environment. So when you put on an AR headset and suddenly it tracks all the geometry in the room, and you're able to like put digital objects on your table or interact with, screens in front of your face. That's augmented reality. Virtual reality is when you can put on a physical headset and be transported to a new environment. So that's when you get into like, Half-Life Alyx or Beat Saber or, something like that.
Perfect. And that's a great way to end it. Thanks a lot, Eugene, for being
Thanks
on
for
the
having
show.
me.
That was great. That was so informative, man. Like, I look at things from like filmmaking and acting perspective. So it's so interesting to get into kind of the weeds of technology like this.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I know there's like this whole, back history of Hollywood and how things have been traditionally done. And, it's my whole job to like push the envelope technology wise and see what we can make or do or, create that is, never been seen before.